The bombing never seemed to end. The torture never stopped. The fires kept burning as the soldiers' screaming echoed in her ears. Rainbow Dash never left Bishop's side during the aftermath. Him and hundreds more were sent to the hospital, and hundreds more were killed on the battlefield. Rainbow Dash had to endure the horrific sights of seeing dozens of men screaming away their last breaths before their eyes blinked for the last time. Seeing the floor flooded with blood as she flew beside her wounded hero when he was carried and transported to the nearest hospital. She spent hours waiting, not knowing if Bishop was alive or dead, waiting outside the hospital, looking through all the windows for him. She never recalled feeling so helpless in her life. There was nothing she could do to help, to ease the pain. All she wanted to know was if Bishop was going to at least survive from this endeavor. It wasn't long before she got an answer. After flying through the window, she sat by his side, looking at the forest of tubes sticking out of his body, his chest slowly rising up and down, the only signs that he was clinging to his frail life. Looking at all of his possessions on the end table, Rainbow Dash was trying to hold her tears back as she saw two nurses walk into the room. Rainbow quickly jumped off the bed and hid underneath as the women walked up to Bishop. Okay. Patient 34. Blood pressure stable, deep lacerations, and internal bleeding. How long do you think he's got? A few hours. Till midnight, if he's lucky. Send the telegram? I heard he has no one to send it to. What a waste. Dash watched as the two nurses kept walking. She walked out from under the bed, not wanting to be kicked out. She was essentially an alien to them, and she didn't want to have to waste time explaining everything again. She just wanted to be alone. Bish, Rainbow Dash sniffled, leaning over him. David, sniff. Can you hear me? There was no response. Come on. You can do it, right? I know you can. You're stronger than this. Yeah. You're stronger than this. Rainbow rested her head on his hand, hoping that anything would happen. She hung on to hope that the hospital could do something to help him, but it was made plainly clear that there was nothing they could do. You can't be dying. You're the strongest person I know. Just 2 hours ago, you said you were going to take me bowling. Rainbow Dash all of a sudden felt overwhelmed with emotion. On the verge of tears, she gritted her teeth before flying out the window as fast as she could. Keeping her eyes closed, she flapped her wings furiously as she fell through the air, ignoring how fast she was really going. Flashbacks of when they first met, when they laughed together, and when they fought together in this world, made her even more infuriated. Suddenly, she felt a resistance against her hooves. Opening her eyes, she saw the world zooming by. As she tried to slow down, she lost her balance, making her stumble. As she adjusted her flight, she caught another glimpse of Pearl Harbor as it was burning. Everything from buildings to aircraft destroyed. Curious, she flew down, looking at the carnage before she touched down. Looking around, she saw injured soldiers being pulled from the debris, some alive, some barely, and others not. She slowly began to walk around the war zone, looking at what was once called a secure place. Suddenly, she stumbled across one of the metal birds which had been crushed during the attack. Looking at the wreckage, she saw the machine guns, the Japanese logo, and the trail of blood where the pilot must have been dragged from the plane. Rainbow Dash then remembered seeing Bishop as he stood on the prow of the sinking ship, aiming his gun at the pilot, staring death in the eyes before firing his gun. And now, a brave soldier like him was reduced to nothing but a mutilated heap, and all because he fought for what he stood for. He fought back, despite the odds, not caring as his life was taken for the sake of hundreds, and this is the reward he gets. It's not fair. Rainbow sat on the ground, staring into the symbol as she could feel her emotions taking over. Seeing the sergeant being thrown back by the explosion, being thrown onto the ground like he was nobody, but a soldier that got in the way. It's not fair. Rainbow Dash mustered all the strength in her legs to kick the steel hull of the plane, denting it before she continued to attack the metal wreckage. Screaming in anguish, she blindly bucked anything she could get her hooves on, her body being driven by nothing but pure, unadulterated hate. Suddenly, she missed a target, making her fall to the floor in a heap. She lay there, staring into the sky. She looked at the striped flag, still burning as it proudly flapped in the wind. Suddenly, she caught a glimpse of something, a little light in the corner of her eye. As she righted herself, she saw it was coming from a large pile of rocks, probably 2 stories high. She trotted over, her will slowly diminishing as she looked at the glow. She then saw a familiar shape. As she used her wings to pick herself off the ground, she saw that it was Bishop's Medal of Honor. Grabbing the gold with her teeth, she yanked it from the rock before flying back to the ground. She held the medal in her hooves, looking at the details in it, how it was barely damaged, and Dash all of a sudden felt something, almost as if Bishop was standing next to her, knowing it wasn't true. She didn't turn around to confirm it. She sat down, still staring at the medal. Then a thought crept into her head as she lifted her wing, seeing that her element was still inside the base of her feathers. A glimmer of hope fluttered in her heart. The elements of harmony. Hey! Rainbow Dash snapped her head, seeing a group of soldiers running towards her. As quickly as she could, she took off in the air. Without looking back, once, she flew as fast as her wings would allow, staring into the distance. She memorized her route. She focused on her destination. She poised herself, as she knew that she was running out of time. Take Bishop to Equestria. Use elements of harmony. Bishop lives, she said out loud, making a note to herself as she began to push against the resistance of nature holding her back. Feeling the familiar rush she felt at the Young Flyers competition, she pushed as hard as she could, feeling the air rush across her wings as her speed increased. Feeling tears fly from her eyes, she gritted her teeth, giving one last push. Boom! She did it. She smashed through the barrier, and she watched as the sky was filled with a spectrum of different colors. As much as she had always marveled at the sight of a sonic rainbow she created, she simply did not have time to do it. In almost an instant, she saw the hospital in the distance, coming rapidly closer. She sprawled her wings open, trying to slow down, but she was going too fast. Both her wings were bent to the breaking point as she tried to slow down. As the strain became too much, she let both her wings go limp before she began to plummet towards the ground. She saw her target, and she closed her eyes, bracing for impact. Crash! Rainbow Dash smashed through the thick glass before rolling onto the floor, sliding across the room before crashing into a cabinet. She didn't waste time in getting back up. She sprinted around the ward, momentarily lost before she saw the sergeant laying there. Unfurling her wings, she grabbed her element, holding it in front of her as she flew onto the chair next to the bed. As she held the element in her hooves, she could feel the energy slowly build as it activated. Looking at Bishop, she smiled, leaning forward to see his chest was still moving. Now was the time. Placing the element in Bishop's hand, she also held onto it with her hooves. A sudden burst of energy sent a small shockwave through the room. A small blast of lightning struck the ceiling as Rainbow Dash could see small items being lifted into the air slowly. She made sure the sergeant was holding the element as she heard the ward doors open. As she turned, she saw a group of doctors and nurses staring at the sight in awe. The room began to light up in a blue glow as they were both lifted into the air. Rainbow Dash all of a sudden felt cold as she looked down at Bishop. A sudden light began to shine on her hooves, and then she felt a sudden, excruciating pain burning her sinuses. The doctors and nurses opened the door before recoiling in horror at the sight of a cyan creature floating in the air, surrounded by a ball of pure energy, with a white glow blooming from its eyes. Dash screamed, desperately holding onto her element, before she felt the freezing cold light consume her body, and her vision blurred as it darkened. Rainbow Dash opened her eyes. Instantly, she knew she was back in Equestria. As she sat up, she felt a stabbing sensation in her stomach as her muscles burned. As she looked to her left, she saw a blurred mass of colors that she knew were her friends. Dashie cringed, expecting her view to be nothing but hateful glares, but instead, when her vision cleared, she saw all her friends looking at her with wide-hearted smiles spread across their faces. Dash tried to sit up again, but this time Twilight held her down. "It's okay, Dash. You're safe. It's okay." "I'm sorry. I had to." "We know," Applejack said, stepping forward, placing a hoof on Rainbow's shoulders. You know?" Dash saw the doctor, now covered in scruffs and bruises, push between the two ponies. "Ahem. Well, I knew that your friends would look for me once you disappeared, and I knew that I was going to get clobbered. So when I tinkered with your element, I also installed a visual centralizer." What?" Rainbow Dash questioned. It allows us to see everything from your perspective." You watched?" "Yes, we did," Twilight started. "We understand why you did what you did. You were so brave, and so was he." "But, Bish, where is he? Is he—" "He's still hanging on. He's over there. Help her up, girls." The rest of the main six helped Rainbow Dash to her feet. The Pegasus then saw that she was on a train. She then saw the captain laid on his back, still breathing. Rainbow Dash felt relieved. As she was carried towards him, she could feel her legs getting their strength back. "I will say one thing," Twilight said, helping Rainbow Dash onto his seat. "Your friend has heart for what he's done to you. No pony should have to go through what you did." "What? Where are we going?" "Canterlot. Princess Celestia is aware of the situation, and is waiting with the elements of harmony." "What? We can bring him back?" "The elements can't bring back the dead Rainbow, but they can heal him, if he's still alive. That's why we're taking the train. Teleporting again would most probably finish him off. His body has already gone through enough." Dash laid next to the captain, looking up at her friends as they smiled back. "Thank you. I can't thank you guys enough." Applejack stepped forward. "Any friend of Rainbow's is a friend of ours." As the train pulled up to the station of Canterlot, Rainbow Dash looked out the window, seeing a line of royal guards along the station before seeing Princess Celestia waiting for them. The doors opened, and Rainbow Dash stayed close to Bishop as he was carried out of the train by Celestia's guards. "It's okay, Bishop. Just hang on. Just hang on." Rainbow looked around the town as Bishop was carried through it, seeing the peculiar stares as they looked at the wounded giant being carried through their town. Rainbow looked up at the castle to see Princess Celestia standing in the tallest tower, waiting. She looked back. Her friends were right beside her, as she felt her legs grow weaker, and they helped her along the way, every step, and as they were soon walking on the grounds of Celestia's castle. Twilight stood in front, before using her magic to open the large door, allowing the guards to walk in. Rainbow Dash looked forward. Both Princess Celestia and her sister, Luna, were present, as the main six followed Bishop's beaten body. Rainbow didn't take her eyes off Bishop for a moment, watching his breathing, making sure he stayed alive for these few precious minutes. Like a statue made of glass, the guards carefully placed the wounded soldier on the ground before backing away, letting the 6 ponies walk by to their leaders. As they all bowed in their presence, the alicorn opened the enchanted door, and the large golden structure divided the two, revealing the small jeweled-encrusted crate. Princess Luna then used her magic to unlock the small chest before taking the remaining 5 elements out of it, and quickly passing them to the main 6, who were gathered in a circular formation around the captain. But then Rainbow noticed an irregularity in Bishop's breathing. His chest started moving more irregularly. "Bishop? Something's wrong!" Rainbow shouted. Twilight already spotted this. Her eyes widened as she began to panic. "He's not got long left. We have to hurry." All of the elements were passed to their owners. First Twilight, then Rarity, Fluttershy, Applejack, and then Pinkie Pie. Rainbow Dash was already wearing hers. "All right, girls," Twilight announced. "This is it. Now focus, every pony. This could be life or death." Rainbow then saw Bishop's chest no longer moving up or down. He now laid flat on the lifeless ground. Or on the ground, lifeless. Dash's heart jumped into her throat, and she felt tears forming in her eyes. She kept her focus. Nothing was going to distract her. Twilight's horn began to glow, creating a large aura of magic, hovering over the captain before consuming him. Dash watched as the soldier floated within the golden bubble, and she felt herself growing light. She was now being lifted into the air herself. The rest of the main 6 were now hovering off the ground, as Princess Celestia, Luna, and their royal guards watched. A sudden burst of energy then sent a small shockwave across the room, almost knocking every pony off their feet. Twilight's eyes then opened up, showing the blinding glow blooming from her eyes. Rainbow looked around. The same thing was happening to the others. She could see Applejack squirm as she felt the noticeable pain in her head, before her eyes also began to glow, a ghostly white. Rainbow Dash then felt the same thing happen to her. Her vision began to turn white as she focused on nothing else but Bishop. Feeling the determination, Twilight then gathered all her strength before blasting a huge beam of pure energy into Bishop's heart. Every pony stood, watching, and they felt their jaw drop as they watched the spectacle. Bishop's body shook violently. All his muscles convulsed under his skin as his body was being restored. Scars began to recede. His wounds slowly closed up, and suddenly the main 6 were bombarded with the hideous memories of Bishop's past as they began to struggle to keep their focus. The explosions, the blood, all the gore. The main 6 were experiencing the captain's most despised memories. Fluttershy felt herself letting go. She began to lower to the ground. Twilight used her magic to lift the Pegasus back up. Pinkie Pie was next to start falling to the ground. Her mane deflated as she was devastated with shock as she saw more of Bishop's past. Twilight then focused her attention on Rainbow, watching as she held her head in her hooves, being forced to experience all those horrifying memories again. She began to scream in anguish as it was all coming back to her. All of a sudden, there was a second Twilight looking down. Bishop looked to be conscious as the light began to shine out of his eyes. His tortured roar sent a chill down every pony's spine. His chest heaved into as he began to thrash wildly. Twilight was losing her focus. She began to fall to the ground. As her hooves touched the floor, she saw Applejack, Rarity, Fluttershy, and Pinkie Pie, all on the ground shaking. desperately trying to prolong the link for as long as possible. But one pony was missing. In the air, Rainbow Dash was still floating, almost as if she was consuming all the power of the 6 elements. Her wails matched the ones of Bishop, and a drop of blood fell from her nose. With one last roar, Rainbow Dash used all her might to channel as much of the power from her body that it would allow before she finally let go. Almost 3 stories high, she started falling to the ground. 2 Pegasus guards were quick to catch Rainbow as she fell limply into their hooves. Hot, hot, hot! Rainbow pulled off her element, throwing it at the ground. The remaining elements laid exhausted on the floor as Rainbow Dash was put on her hooves. The Pegasus fell, quickly dismissing the guards as she insisted on walking by herself. The whole room fell silent as Rainbow Dash limply walked towards Bishop, still lying motionless on the floor. She felt a deep burning in her chest as she rubbed the burns on her neck. She was standing next to the soldier, and she recoiled at the sight. Bishop looked to be younger, a lot younger, more like he was in his early 30s instead of his late 40s, that she looked and had gotten used to. She stood closer, looking at his completely refurbished bodies. No scars, wounds, or even wrinkles. He looked like he had been completely reborn. But then Dash looked down. His chest was still not moving. She placed her hooves on his shoulders, shaking him gently, salty tears burning into her eyes, as she began to sob louder and louder. "No! Come on! No! This can't be! You can't be dead! No!" Rainbow Dash laid her head on top of Bishop's body as she wailed, beating furiously at his chest as she felt her heart slowly tear into pieces. All the other ponies could do was watch the mare grieve. Rainbow Dash lost all her strength. She laid still, gritting her teeth. She then heard something. She pressed her ear against Bishop's chest. She heard a heartbeat. The captain bolted up, seeing Rainbow Dash in front of him. He grabbed her tightly before standing up in a defensive stance, out of breath. His eyes scanned the room as he struggled to breathe. The whole room stayed quiet, and the captain looked, confused to see so many different colored Rainbow Dashes in one room. Wait, what room? He thought to himself as he searched his surroundings. Slowly, he began to calm himself down before holding the cyan Pegasus in front of his view, her eyes streaming with tears of joy. Rainbow Dash? David! As he embraced the Pegasus, he caught a glimpse of his hands, now completely smooth. Feeling his face, he tried to process what was happening. He could have sworn that 2 seconds ago he was about to kiss the nose cone of a Japanese shell. What's going on? What happened to me? Am I dead? Rainbow Dash then squeezed Bishop tighter, unable to say anything that wouldn't just be babbling nonsense. Bishop sighed, a tear falling from his eye. It was all too real. Closing his eyes, he began to openly sob with Rainbow Dash, as every pony watched teary-eyed.